had probably 6 classes now. Our latest classes was a class this size with fire prevention, building department, vendors who repaired fire escapes, and the architects and engineers in the class. Talking about now what is the standard, because everybody was still, you know, playing the game, oh, an opinion is okay for me and you're gonna accept it whether you like it or not. I've been 30 years here in this city, I know the mayor, you know, that whole thing that comes. So all these classes are there, but the best thing is in the downtown walk around, we looked at new things, we looked at old things, and we did things that were already certified, that when we got there with this cluster of 20, 30 people walking down the downtown, being recorded, they said, this is just certified. And all of a sudden we're looking up and we're seeing rust in the connection, they just painted over things, so it becomes very revealing. So you just can go online now and watch classes on what to look for when you're doing a downtown walk around through the sidewalk. Okay? So, but my connection is not very good, and they won't let me on YouTube. I was using my phone. So let me see if it'll still play, but it's actually my phone. Maybe I walked away too far. Nope. So let's escape here. So everybody clear? Fire prevention. This is where you write your code. You write all your violations.
Not necessarily.
Oh, this all is something.
As we know with the state, what you see on one way, looking at the book, there is no 27.16, it ends at 27.6,
It was a misprint, man,
somewhere.
somewhere. Somebody, the person that brought this to me,
Yeah.
actually just made a phone call, asked that very question to whoever printed those books, why is it on the state but not in the book? So somebody here who actually handed this to me made that phone call as inquiring why it's here but not in the printed book. And you know what he got? He got the...
Yeah, that's generally what we deal with, but if we go back to the administrative section, it talks about section 1030 shall apply to existing buildings. Everything from 1002 to 1029 is dealing with new construction.
Just when we had a good foothold, and what it is this is the sad thing about it. Fire escapes, not only just having a paragraph or two, if it ever gets swept under the rug, it does. But we have 4 other codes, and the one that we like the best is the NFPA because it says it the clearest.
And that's why I was getting backwards earlier, is I would write it for the 1030.2 and then refer them back to the building code, which is the 1002 through the 1029 dealing with new construction.
No, when you write your violation, you use your code.
Correct.
When fire prevention writes theirs, they
Well, no,
write...
I'm fine. I'm fine. But what I'm saying is, I'm gonna refer them back to the building department for the permitting and inspection.
No, we know that.
Right, but it's gonna be very limited on the enforcement on my end.
You're just writing a violation.
Correct. And I'm gonna CYA myself.
Correct. It's a CYA class. So what we're basically doing here is, fire escapes must be maintained in good working order at all times, must be full instant use. So we're dealing with full instant use, must be maintained at all times. The general code for, on the state laws of every state say you must maintain your structure.
And that's what I was talking about earlier, is I'm gonna, on my violation under the fire department, I'm gonna write it for 1030.2, using that impediment per se, and immediate use, but I'm gonna refer it back to the building department for the actual violation.
So we have a current case that we're gonna use later on as a case study, if we get time allows, 900 West Franklin. We were called there by the client, but because fire department wrote something, or does somebody update us on 900 West Franklin? Was it a fire violation, fire code violation or request, or was it a building code violation or request to have the fire escapes examined? Does anybody remember for 900 West Franklin? What was the reason why 900 West Franklin got called to have an examination done? Was it a building violation or a fire violation?
It was a fire complaint. I was investigating a complaint by a fire.
Okay, there was a complaint by a fire company that the fire escapes didn't look good?
No, they were there on an alarm issue.
An alarm issue.
Old building, existing building fell under the code when it's not required to be monitored.
Okay,
So they wanted to know about that. I went in to check on that, something hit out the window because there's one interior stairwell.
correct? It has one interior stairwell, two fire escapes, one at the front corner of the building, one in the back alleyway, and then a bunch of Romeo and Juliet balconies.
Saw the condition, and then I just inquired if they had any certification for the fire escape.
Okay?
From there,
So what we need to do is, a lot of times when you start something like this, you need one lead guy that is going to become the fire escape guy from building, one lead guy from fire prevention that's going to be the fire escape guy, and all activities go through these guys. Everybody does their work and handles, but then you basically just use it as a case study so that the first 10 or 20 fire escapes jobs that go through basically go through both sides. And you use whatever code you need to cover, you use whatever code you need to cover, but it doesn't matter because you're both going to use the code to get it covered. So that's what happens. So a complaint generated a visual that generated a concern, an unsafe condition, and he wrote up, he asked for a copy of the certificate. He didn't order a test, he asked for a copy of one. They didn't have one, they called for one. So this is that thing that they said, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the rule of the law in the United States. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Until you guys trip over it, nobody's going to ask about it. So right now, if we start asking and creating the trigger, which is, you got a sprinkler test done on your building, and you have an external steel or wooden stair, what do you want attached with it? Not ordering one, what do you want attached? Certification. You're getting an alarm system certification on a building, what do you want attached? Okay? You're getting the fire extinguishers. When you're doing, yes?
And just to let you know that they are going to repair that fire escape, so.
No. Yeah, we're gonna use it as a case, so we'll go through the history, because, again, when was this violation written, if anybody knows?
How long ago was it, London? How long ago did we write this?
Yeah, about 2 months ago, so it's going to get repaired. I've been talking to the guy that owns the building.
Correct.
So it's going to get repaired.
Okay, so as a case study, this call came in either at the end of October or beginning of November. Okay? So as a case study, and this fire escape has some life safety issues as a case study. So we're going to go into all the details, but it's not uncommon for a fire escape system to run 3, 6, 9 months because they start the process of the examination, and what happens is then they start the process of you know, not dealing with the fire prevention, because the first step you have is you wrote a violation. You want that immediately taken care of, which is called the evaluation. You want that as soon as possible. Because once you have the evaluation, it's supposed to be you and the owner talking for the next phase of the plan, which could include what? If there's life safety issues. Scaffolding or other arrangements made. Repairs. Repairs can be put off. Can life safety be put off? So a lot of times what happens is when some process starts, the owners utilize the inspection process and the permitting, not the permitting, but the repair process to delay. So what we're trying to say is when you get this program under control, you're going to order an immediate evaluation, and as soon as the evaluation is done and you get a copy of the pass or fail, what do you do with it? You need to sit down with who? The inspection company or the owner? With the owner. From there, you will determine the plan to give the owner a date of time. Otherwise, if the owner doesn't call you, think what kind of time does he think he has? So we're going to shorten that up, and that's going to be part of the process. You will, once you write a violation, they have to immediately give you the results immediately. So a lot of times when an examination is done, we call ahead, and that's what we did with Richmond. We're going to be examining in your area. Do you have any specific criteria for the examination? Do you want a witness, or do you just want a copy of the report? And they say, I want a copy of the report. So we get the copy of the report immediately to them, as well as the client. But then the clients, they love to go in which direction? Towards you or away from you? So we'll cover that today. Yes?
I think I found another one that might help us out, which is, by looking in this book, it's 1021.1.1, exits maintained. The required number of exits from any story shall be maintained until arrival at grade or public way.
Okay.
So if the building is required to have the two means of egress, and then one of those is being the fire escape, I would write it under the 1030.2 and then go back to the building code or the building official for the 1021.1.1 and reference that in my 1030.2 violation.
So anybody wants to nominate, I need your name, please?
Joe? what's-
Joe, anybody want to nominate Joe as the new fire escape guy for the state of Virginia? Good job, man. But this is what it needs. It needs somebody to keep digging, and there's not that many, but they all reference back to each other, and that's all it needs. So you need a lead guy that wants to sort of help everybody not get caught in the mill here, and you need a lead guy on the fire prevention side to do the exact same thing, because all you need to do is not have somebody find an escape route out of the back, a loophole. So fire prevention has what we just talked about, and building department has what you just talked about. And so now let's go back to,
I got a question.
go ahead.
So what determines someone in the Commonwealth certified to do fire escape inspections or?
Who can do it?
No, I'm asking, in the Commonwealth here, I'm not sure. Who determines can come in and do an inspection on the fire escape?
It's in the code. A design professional or others acceptable to the building official.
So is there supposed to be credentials that we look for?
It could be some city officials say, hey, I only want a structural engineer looking at this. Some others say, as long as you're a design professional, I don't care. So an architect shows up and a civil engineer shows up and looks at it. And if you're happy with that, it's your call. Or you can say, you know, I know you're an engineer, but you know, you move dirt, dude. This is a building. I don't think you have the expertise I'm looking for. Otherwise, you are qualified, do your report, and at the end, guess what you're gonna pull out of the back of your pocket? What are you gonna drop on his head?
Trump card.
Load
Load test.
Right?
Right.
But anybody that's a design professional is authorized and qualified to inspect any fire escape in your state.
Are they supposed to be a part of your association?
No, they're registered. Anybody registered in your state. So a lot of times, you can't bring in a West Virginia inspector to inspect in your state. You may not allow it. It has to be registered in your state. So it's a registered design professional in your state. So that's architects and engineers. So it doesn't have to be structural, but you can say, I only want a structural guy looking at this. And it could be others acceptable to the building official. So somebody in the field. I'm a guy in the field. I have 2 licenses. They don't happen to be from Virginia. You may say to me, I won't accept your license. I need you to partner up with somebody from our state that's a structural engineer. And I do. Plenty of guys out there with a shingle that will partner up with us on the fire escape. And sometimes you'll let us handle it and then bring in somebody at the very end to verify. So again, what I'm teaching here, nobody wants. This is, you know, when you have a structural engineer or an engineering firm, this is how you punish the people. You know, you don't like somebody in your firm, you throw them on fire escape activities. The fastest child of egress, nobody cares about it, it's rusty and it's dangerous. You know, you gotta go out and examine. So, let's take a look at what happens on fire escapes. They either maim or kill, and this one maimed a fireman. So we got this call, a New York firm hired me to be an expert witness. I was working along with a metallurgist, and what happened here is the fire escape, the fireman had to go up through this alleyway here, go up there, you have to open up that window up there to basically vent out. And on his way up, he fell to 2 or 3 steps right there. Came down, then he went back up. Saved a woman and a child out of there, brought him down, and then all of a sudden, by the time the adrenaline wore off. So, when we went up there, this is 2 years later they brought me in. When we were there, the fire escape was in a state of collapse. You know what was not in a state of collapse? Those 2 to 3 steps that he fell through. They fixed those. So here we are examining a fire escape with lawyers and engineers and fire captains, because we're all back, you know. And this is the condition I found. So as I'm going up, treads are falling under my own feet. So we have video going, we have cameras going. So this case quickly settled after this. You know what I'm saying? Because all of a sudden, here's a fire escape ready to take the next fireman. Because even though they got the fire escape fixed, those 3 steps, the owner didn't even fix the whole thing. He fixed those 3 treads. So, but here's the information that we got. Because with the metallurgist. So I have to prove to you that fire escapes rot from the inside out. Got it? So every fire escape in the nation is built from a piece of 20-foot steel. whether you're making treads, railings, okay? And what you have is a piece of steel that's naked. Anybody that's ever put a torch to a plumbing pipe, what happens when you look at the metal? What happens when you put the torch on it? It doesn't look like it's wet and it starts drying out, right? You do that to steel, it's the same thing. When you heat steel, it looks like it's wet and it starts drying out. So there's moisture constant. So what's rust need? Two things, moisture, air. So what you have is when you have two pieces of steel, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, you take two pieces of steel and you put them together. And you drill a hole through them and you bolt it with a rivet or a bolt. Now when you put those two pieces of steel together and you're making a tread, are you priming these pieces before you put them together? No. So you're putting these two raw pieces of steel that are already wet, you know, because it has moisture inside. And then you drill a hole through it, so you've basically done something to the steel. And steel doesn't like when you drill it, weld it, or do something, because what happens? You disturb that area, so now that is going to react first. So you put the bolt or the rivet through the two pieces of steel, making a rail, making a tread, making a bracket. And then you take that piece, whether you made a bracket or a tread, and then you prime it. And how do you prime it? You try to get back in there, or you encapsulate it. So you encapsulate it, so you paint all around it, all over it, and you basically seal the joint, because that sealed joint stops what from getting to the moisture? Air. So now you've got these two raw pieces of steel, you've encapsulated with primer, you've given it another paint job, and you need to repaint steel. Take a Rust-Oleum can today, and it says, take a piece of steel, good conditions, make it clean, put a primer on it, put a top coat of paint on it, and then it says right on the can, on a Rust-Oleum can, when you repeat the process. 7 years later. The whole process. So on the good conditions, you gotta reprime your fire escape, repaint it, right? So, 100 years ago. After the first coat, what comes next? So, piece of steel gets sun and it gets cold. So when you heat it up and you've got these two pieces that used to look like this, and you heat it, it does this. When you cool it, it does this. When you blow wind on it, it does this. And what does it do to that nice seal they used to have on the tread or on the gusset or any two joints that got together? What happens to that primer and paint seal, which you should have repainted in 1911? What happens to it? It cracks, allowing what to get in? Moisture and air, which is the two things you need to create what? Rust, which if you give it 25 years, how much do you grow? Quarter inch. You give it 50 years, how much do you grow? Half an inch. So now, here's the life cycle of a connection. There's a metallurgist that was using this as, so what you have here is that in the first 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to get what's called surface rust. So the paint has cracked, air is trying to get in there because it's really tight, and it's trying to creep in from the top, the tread. And what you're supposed to do is every 5 to 7 years, go in with your wire brush and do what? Scrape that away, apply a spot primer to that area, and give it a top coat. Did we do that in 1911? No. So we moved on to 25 to 30 years later, right? What's it done since you never repainted it? It actually penetrated, but it's only a little bit. It's only like a 16th. But it's all the way through, and there's the rivet, and it's now trying to basically do what's called rust jacking. So it's in there. What used to be like this is now 1/16 apart. So what, when you stretch something 1/16 apart, what happens to the rivet or the shaft or the bolt with a nut on it? So you stretch it out like spaghetti, go, right? It's only a 16th though. So you hammer test and you ping this, is it going to hold you? Yeah, of course it is, right? So you scrape off the big rust that's already accumulating at the top, and what do you do with the inside rust there? Paint over it, right? So all of a sudden now, because it did get rusty, somebody did write a violation in 1937, and they gave it a paint job. And what kind of violation they wrote in 1937?
Paint.
Scrape paint. And what did they do?
Scrape paint.
They scraped paint. Some did remove that, some didn't. And it all depends on which way the sun hits. Same tread, but on the other side, it's growing slower. So the sun and the rays affect the paint. And if you got a tree over the fire escape, it affects, you know, if it's on the sunny side or the wet side, there's a million things that will upset it. The same five fire escapes on one building, everyone has a different time scale of how they're rusting. But you want to know what's going on here. So in the 30s and 40s and 50s, were these things hurting anybody?
Nope.
So Now we're starting to get to a 1/4 inch. Now these rivets and these bolts, when they get pushed, the tread, you know, this rivet used to be like that, so as I push the tread clip outwards, what happens when I get to the very end of my, that rivet? And the rivet is a huge mushroom on one side. What's the tail? Is it a nut, or is it just smashed, squished steel? It's squished steel that quickly you lose it, so all of a sudden now you're getting to the edge. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all your fire escapes were doing this. What year were we in here? Oh, we're in 2014. We're at this level. So we got rust in every single one of these connections, 1/4 plus. And whether you have a rivet or a bolt in there, what's it done to the bolt? A shaft. Is that suspect? As soon as you get a 16th in anything, does it make that connection suspect? So as it rusts in the inside, it eats any paint it has, and then it starts eating the paint on the tread, the paint on the stringer, the paint on the rail. So when you get to a fire escape and it's all rusty, where did it start? It started on the inside of every connection. Okay? So that's when it falls. So this is what we got when we got there to that case for the firemen, what we found. Still there. As we're walking up the thing, this is what's happening. So imagine that this was an emergency. Another woman on the 3rd floor that we needed to get out. So I knew how to walk on this, but everybody was like, what's going on here? Across the way, this is a shot of the building next to us. And what is that? So we're suing one building, but maybe the guy owns 2 buildings. All right, so now, take a look at your book. We're gonna show you how all fire escapes have been built for 100 years. And that's this section right here. And we're gonna land on cantilevers. And somebody mentioned in here about the fold-out ladders. You know, when we land on ladders, you know those flop-out ladders where somebody pivoted in the middle so that the thing goes like that, those are illegal. We're gonna prove why. If they can maim or kill you, they're illegal. Otherwise, they have to be single action, requiring no special knowledge. And that's what makes it illegal to have a flop-out ladder. So, all steel in the building. If it's a single action, it's only buried 8 to 12 inches deep. That's it. And either it has a lake to the ground or it's gonna have a bracket. But some of these, if they're single, they usually have a railing on top, spanning 10 plus feet. The railing is a truss. Got it? So the reason why it can span and have that bracket, these brackets are usually to hold the grating, but the truss is the railing is acting as a truss. Okay? And that's what they look like going in. And when rust grows, a 1/4 inch becomes 1 inch of rust. What happens as it grows inside, it's called rust jacking. And then when you open up the cracks, you allow water to get in there, and it's called ice jacking. So once it cracks, it's going to push down to the sides and up. These little sills made out of, you know, what's that stone? Limestone. How hard are those? So as it pushes in all 4 directions, what's the easiest for it to crack? Up. So the first thing you see in all fire escapes underneath windowsills, you see cracked windowsills. Because the rust has grown, it's cracked the windowsill. Once the windowsill cracks, what does it feed it? Because it needs water. So it's a vicious cycle. It basically says, I'm getting some water, I'm growing in all 4 directions. I try to go down, there's too many bricks below that are holding me. I can't go to the side because I got good bricks on both sides of me, but I got a weak part above me, which is a window frame, a window. So I'll bust this in no time. So it grows in the direction it can, it breaks up all your sills, and then this is all feeding water back to it because that's what it needs to make rust. Gentlemen, this is rusty gold. All right, I know. We've been watching that thing now, the Appalachian Sing thing now. It's pretty common, you know. Now that this is the next billion-dollar activity. It's rusty gold. Okay, so you have plenty of it growing here in your cities. So, so here's a bracket on this side, and here's a bracket by itself with 2 staircases and falling treads. Yeah, where's the bracket that belongs here? So only 8 to 12 inches deep. So is this a life safety concern? Got it? So It doesn't go 2 feet into the building, 8 to 12 inches deep only. This is a typical bracket. So 8 to 12 inches deep up here, single bolt or gusset there, and it usually ties back into the building. They haven't changed in 100 years how these things are built. This is how they're all built. I'm going to cover wood too on this. So a lot of times when the water comes down here, channels in here, what happens? Spalling, rusting, growing, and all this. So this is a combination of rust jacking and ice jacking that causes these things. When they go into the buildings, a lot of your older factories are going to have this. They're going to have a plate on the inside or a button, a cast iron button. What happens over time when if the cast button is too small? They're going to pull right through. There's too much pressure on one. So those need to be redone with a proper plate grabbing a good portion of the wall. So very rare does a through bolt go into a masonry building. Usually on factories you're going to have plenty of through bolts because the interior of the walls are always exposed. Wood structures are the ones that get the through bolts. Everything else is pocketed 8 to 12 inches deep into the standard wall of every masonry building. 9 out of 10 buildings, masonry, it's just pocketed in there. If you guys have questions, throw a stick or raise your hand. So this is rust that occurs. This is actually a parking garage down in Houston. So what happens here is water gets in, sits there in puddles. They throw salt on it if for some reason it needed it, and then what happens? It sits there rotting from underneath. This is 1 inch of rust on a fire escape outside a library. So if it took 50 years to grow a ½ inch, how do you get to a 1 inch? Okay? This is a very old library, but yet this is what firemen and kids are going to step on in case there's a fire. And look at all the other reds. So if you have enough moisture going on in case you want to build exotic ferns or you have some exotic plants, you should grow them on fire escapes. So anybody in law enforcement, there's another place now to grow cannabis. So with the last, well, another way before we get to the through bolts is a leg to the ground. So whenever you have a fire escape where it's tied into the building 8 to 12 inches deep, there's a leg to the ground sitting on a sonotube. The building is a leg, the leg is a leg, and what do you have? You have a bridge. So whenever you're not using brackets, you can put legs to the ground. So if you have a very weak wall, what's the answer? Leg it to the ground because now the building is a leg, the leg is a leg, we've eliminated the concern on the wall. Okay? Rusty tears? Okay? Barbed wire, is it allowed? Okay, every now and then you get smashed by a truck. So a lot of times they'll only fix the veneer. But where's the real damage? Inside. Okay? Veneer is not structural. This is through bolting. This is on a wood structure. That's usually a 5/8 to 3/4. The plate on the inside usually picks up a stud or picks up the entire bank of studs underneath the window as such. And there's a lag screw down here, basically just for position. There's nothing other than keep it in position. The way you know on a wood structure that something's wrong is when you have 3, 4 lag screws. Not lag bolts, lag screws. That means there is no through bolt there. And that's an illegal installation. So no lag screws ever on a fire escape. No expansion bolts ever on a fire escape. You can have epoxy bolts and through bolts on a fire escape into a masonry wall, but every now and then you get there and you know that something's wrong when they put too many expansion sleeve anchors. So it's got to be all the way through, or it's got to be an epoxy bolt for anything into a masonry building. Otherwise, it has to be a through bolt. Yeah, otherwise, if it's not proper, it'll pull in, it'll start destroying. Cantilevers, okay? Cantilevers work like this. I'm going to give you a scenario. Single action requiring no special knowledge. This release arm is actually an anti-theft device, so you can't pull it down and break into the building because it has a release arm. It's a single pole that blocks my way. If I run into it and I go like that, it rotates, and when it rotates, there's a little arm down here on the cantilever, so that when I rotate it here, this thing weighs 25 pounds more there than it weighs here, and there's 1,000 pounds here, and there's, you know, it's a seesaw, 2/3 out there, 1/3 in the back. And when you release it, it's gonna drop by itself, 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground and stay down by itself. Right? So that by the time I walk down here and I hit this pivot point, she's already down on the ground. I self-evacuate, and 1 minute, 10 minutes, or 1 hour later when you arrive, what do you use it for? Getting up. So I egress out, you ingress in, if you wish to use it. That's how fire escapes are supposed to be, and that's where the cantilever is supposed to be, 12 to 14 feet off the ground so that trash trucks can go underneath it, and they can use alleyways. So that's where you're gonna find these, in alleyways, where all of a sudden, or you can have these, in case somebody has a problem with break-ins, they can take the full staircase to the ground and put in a cantilever system. You can't take a cantilever away, or a stair away, and put in a ladder, it's illegal. So you can't go down. But you can take a ladder away and put in a full staircase to the ground. So you can upgrade. So now, a woman, 150 pounds, child, 50 pounds. There's a fire, okay? So she comes running down the stairs, she hits the release arm, she releases, she walks down the fire escape with a child in tow, she walks down the staircase and self-evacuates. Now, whenever you get to a situation that the fire escape is wrong, it's out of balance, there's a chain on it, there's no release arm, and they have to walk out. You guys remember this guy? Colorado Springs, this year, 2 weeks ago. You guys remember Philadelphia? This year, 4 weeks ago. Okay? So, here's how it's wrong. There is no release arm on this. The 150-pound woman comes down with a child. She comes down at night in her pajamas, coming out of a window. She comes out 2 steps with her child in tow. Anything happen? If it's out of balance and balanced backwards? With a chain? Usually have a chain right here. Keep it horizontal. She goes out 4 steps, what happens? She goes out 6 to 8 steps, what finally starts happening? It's gonna drop, not at 2 to 3 feet per second, it's gonna drop 5 to 10 feet per second, slam on the ground and scare the hell out of her. She starts crying, the kid starts crying, but they hold on. She then collects herself, walks down to the edge of the fire escape that is now on the ground, you know, the nose of it is on the ground, and all of her 150 pounds goes off as she has a 50-pound child in tow, and what happens? So all of a sudden now, there's a 50-pound child 12 to 14 feet in the air. You guys remember the Bridgeport situation, right? And she is telling the child to do what in the alleyway? And the child says what? Right? So the next thing that happens is that she, in her nightgown, she says, you know what, I'm going to go where to get my child? Back in the building. So she goes down the alleyway, goes to the front of the building. She forgot her. She grabs a chair, a brick, or anything that she can find, and she's about to throw it through the front door. And when somebody shows up, who's that? The fireman. The fireman says, what are you doing? Crazy lady out here? He goes, my baby, come on down. The fireman run down the alleyway with her, wasting some more time, and the baby's up 12 to 14 feet, and the fireman says, what to the kid? The kid says, what to the fireman?
No way.
I've been here before, dude. So the fireman runs back and goes get his pipe pole all the time. Is this a firefighter or fire rescue?
Fire rescue.
So he goes up, grabs the pole, pulls it down, reunites the mom with the kid, puts his foot on the fire escape, because if he takes his foot off, what happens? So you've just lost one guy, and what's his job? Was that how it was ever designed? So that's how it's supposed to work. Single action requiring no special knowledge. We've just let it become an actual problem because it traps people on a fire escape. And you turn a firefight into a fire rescue. So that's a lot of wasted time. And people die within the first 2 to 3 minutes, right? So these cantilevers without release arms, what happens to them? They stop moving. Any snow and ice gets on them, what happens? They hit the ground, they got to call in the middle of the night, your fire escape is down. So what did they do? I'm an owner, you keep calling me every other week in the wintertime to pull the thing up because the snow, the pigeons landed on it because it was so perfectly balanced. So what do? What do I tell the local vendor to do? Go to Home Depot and get $25 worth of chain, get some garbage out of your shop there and fill what in the bucket? Make it balance what? Backwards. The chain stops it from going what? To the sky, so that you don't write me a violation. And even if I release it, what does it do? So now she's gonna have to go out. Life safety issue, by the way? So every cantilever you see that has a chain on it, it's out of balance. Is it a life safety issue? And it's a life safety issue because when you get there, are you fighting fire or are you in a fire rescue mode? So is that time you can afford to waste? So it's a life safety issue. So for fire prevention, anytime you see a chain and an out of balance fire escape, it's already one of the first life safety concerns because it's no longer single action requiring no special knowledge. So trash trucks smash into these things all day long. So whenever you get to a fire escape and you got a smashed fire escape system at the bottom, is this a life safety issue? Can the building be occupied? Because they're going to get trapped, and when you show up, you firefighting or fire rescue? So it's a life safety issue. So as soon as they put up some quick scaffolding, what happens? Go back in business again, keep the people in the building, right? So when the trucks smash these things, first order of business, let's get some scaffolding here immediately so you can keep your people in the building. Otherwise, you're going to let this continue for a week or so and shut it down. Staircases, they're tied at the top and they're tied at the bottom with bolts. Some of them have these hooks, and some of them have these notches. Some of them don't have either one. So what happens when you don't have either one and the bolts fail? So this is me looking up at several buildings, and the stringer clips are all shot. So is it the stair that's going to fall or the staircase that's going to fall? This is a 28-story building in Chicago. This is like, with a zoom camera, this is about 8 stories up. Another stringer being held. Moving trucks. They do this all the time. Rails and how they're tied in. Some rails are tied into the frame of the fire escape platform. Some are not. Rust grows. When you make a sandwich between two pieces of steel, what are you going to get between the two? Rust jacking and ice jacking, a combination of both. Because rust needs two things to grow. It needs air and water. Rust is guaranteed to grow unless you slow it down. Treads. Some gratings have spacers that keep the 1-inch spacing. So the further south you go, it's all flats. The further north you go, it's all spacers on one end because you got snow and ice that has to go through it. So it's all regional. And these things have a rod inside, plus these 1-inch little tubes. And they all rot from the inside out. Can I fix those? Can I reinforce it with another, right next to it? Can I put a piece of flat next to it? A piece of flat on top of it? Make a mechanical sandwich and negate this? And get another 10, 15, 20 years out of that piece of grating? Do you have to replace everything? Can you reinforce it and meet your other evidence of strength requirement? Rusty gold. I gotta get those ginseng guys to get into the fire escape business now. Got it? See the rust on the treads? As soon as you lose this front flat, that's where you're going to get a trip. Because the rod through it, let go. 1/2 inch of rust. This is a school by the ocean, so every time you're near the ocean, I don't know how many inspections have to go through that building for somebody not to notice 1 inch of rust on the tread. This is the ladders, the fold-out ladders that you guys talked about. Okay, let's look at ladders in California. They actually have sliding ladders because they have no snow or ice issues. These don't lock up. You probably can't use these here because if they freeze up or lock up, got it? So single action requiring no special knowledge. They also allow accordion ladders in California. So again, where ladders are permissible, it's an accordion ladder. It'll go up to 24 feet. And when you release it, these things open up and it's a stiff ladder. And it's an accordion, it's called an accordion ladder. You're not gonna get any here because you get snow and ice. You guys don't get too much snow, though, too much ice this year. Fixed ladders. All ladders, all codes require that you make a fire escape system to grade. In some codes, it says that you're allowed at the 8-foot level to basically stop there and continue to grade with a fold-out or a drop-down staircase. So people took the code and they stopped at 8 feet and they didn't want to read the rest of it. So all fire escapes must be continuous to grade. So you know how many ladders end 8 to 10 feet from the ground that upon inspection are now pre-existing non-conforming and not to code, and not to today's code, not to the code in the 40s when they built it because it was supposed to be all the way to grade. They just read only enough of the code, or during break-ins and things, a lot of people started cutting off a piece of their fire escape without letting you know. So all fire escapes must be continuous to grade, no jumping for grandma, 8 to 10 feet. And that means, now there's 3 ways you can finish that. Take this ladder, add a slider to it, with weights up above that slide down the rest of the 8 feet. That's called a sliding ladder. You can take this and take the ladder away, put a full staircase to the ground, and have a cantilever that stays above ground so nobody breaks in. That's a cantilevered staircase, weight balanced staircase. There's also another one that we're going to show. It looks like a drain pipe, but it's a fold-out ladder. And that is, when it locks up, the bars that are horizontal, they're pivoted on both ends, and they close into it. It looks like a drain pipe when it's closed. When you release it from above, the ladder, one side is fixed all the way to the ground. The ladder flops out, and it makes horizontal bars 18 inches wide. So there's 3 ways to be continuous to the ground and still avoid the break-in issues. Here's your weight balanced ladders. Here's the goosey neck ones that you guys love. And I believe in one of the pieces that we sent to you guys, Chicago, 2010, a fireman on the gooseneck part fell. And these are common because they, you know, roofers don't know what to do here, nobody knows what to do here, and a lot of these are very loose. Here's that flop out. Somebody talked to me about a flop out. This is called a flop out. This is a modified fire escape that was never supposed to be like this. There's no code that lets you build one of these. So you basically pivot the ladder that used to be a single ladder, maybe on the side here, and you pivot it, and up here on this thing that's leaning backwards is a chain, and you're supposed to take the chain and let it out slowly. Is that single action requiring no special knowledge? And as soon as it goes far enough away, depending if grandma's holding it or somebody strong is holding it, you have to hold that weight. But as soon as it goes beyond horizontal and I've got my thing, what happens to it? As soon as it goes horizontal, it gets to a point where it just takes off on itself and I can't slow it down. If there's a dog, a child, or a fireman's hat down below, what happens to it? Could it get critically injured? Could it be maimed? Does the law allow such a thing?
Guillotine.
Okay, so the only thing you can ever make on a fire escape is a fixed ladder to the ground, a balanced ladder that drops with weight, a cantilevered staircase to the ground, or one of these fold-outs. So if you see a flop out, life safety issue? Okay, if the wind blows this thing, and sometimes the chain, you know what they do with the chain? They tie it like a rope. You know, you ever untie chain that somebody tied it like a rope? Okay, so if any of you see one of these, and this is what it looks like when it opens up, you just can't be anywhere underneath it when it comes out. Because a lot of times you throw it. And when you throw it and it slams on the ground, what happens to the ladder itself?
Bends.
It bends. Cantilevers. If you don't put a chain on this thing, you're going to write a violation on this? Right? If you're walking by this building and this thing is pointing to the sky, are you going to write a violation? You're going to be concerned? So for 25 bucks, my vendor went out, he grabbed the chain, put it here, and tied it where? Somewhere good or just anywhere? And it becomes horizontal again, and you will not write a violation. That's why they put chains on these things, to avoid you writing violations. Chains were never part of a fire escape cantilever, ever. Now, I got a million reasons why I'm on this fire escape. And that's because we fully refurbished this entire fire escape system. And all the connections were done, except one thing was done. Over here, there was a stiffener angle that was put on this thing. Now, the stiffener angle, all it did was just keep that weight on the back from bowing out, because in Chicago, there's only a single weight on the back. But I want to show you how violent this thing is if you're going to use it every day, 3 to 5 times a day, like a restoration company did for about 3 or 4 months. So it comes down 2 to 3 feet per second, hits the ground and stays down, right? But how violent is all that twisting every day? So we fully refurbished the fire escape system, and what we didn't do is, when on the angle that was welded on the side 25 to 50 years ago, which had no evidence of rust, growth, bulging or anything, did we put any bolts in there? Or we give it an opinion? We gave it an opinion. Thank you very much for answering that question. So with that opinion, and then this restoration company coming in after the fact and using it every day for 2 to 3 months, what do you think happened to that welded angle on a stiffening of a cantilever? Did you think it popped some of its welds? So it popped some of its welds, and it had 8 to 10 to 12 welds. As it popped every weld, do you think it made some noise, telling somebody, hey, some of this is starting to break? This is showing you just what happens with the 14-foot trucks, why all cantilevers have to be 12 to 14 feet. And when this guy was backing up, did he see whether or not a cantilever up above was in a down position or not? So that's how they tear them down.
Going in, it's got a full load coming out.
Right, and you see the chain up there? On this one? So the point that I was trying to make on this is that that piece of angle that was welded, that we gave an opinion on, was breaking. 3 to 4 months later, it finally broke, and it hit who on the head? Did it hit the landlord on the head, collecting his rent check? Did it hit one of the restoration vendors' employees, trying to just feed his family? Did he have his helmet on? Hopefully. Didn't have his helmet on. So, here we have, and by the way, they're using the fire escape as a working platform. Did you notice all the rope and everything? So, what happens when you touch a fire escape and use it as a working platform? Who owns it? We certified it in January. They started working out in February. It didn't break till March or April. Who owns it? But when the guy got conked in the head, and it almost killed him, he sued everybody. So he sued who last touched it, which was us, the vendors that last touched it, the engineers and the architects that last wrote on it. He sued the owner of the building. He sued the management company of the building. He sued the renter in the building, the shoe store that was in the building. He sued Annie's City of Chicago, got pulled in. And why is that? Because they accepted a certification on it, which was an opinion. And my certification at that time had an opinion. This took 7 years, just cleared this year. They wanted $27 million. They gave them $1 million. So there's 2 parts of the story. Number 1 is, will I ever give you an opinion on a weld ever again? So I can x-ray it or load test it, or I'll take any weld that looks good to me, and I do what with it? Drill a hole and do what to it? Put a bolt in it, and then what happens? So all welded connections in fair to good condition get what?
Back.
Get a bolt so I don't have to x-ray it or load test it. So you give me an all welded fire escape, and I will be load testing it. Or I will take every welded connection done by a certified welder. The fire escape was built 7 years ago, and I want what? I want it all turned mechanical, to back to bolt. So 98% of all the fire escapes in the US are bolted connection anyway. Why somebody still welds them today is beyond, but it doesn't matter because every 5-year cycle asks for an x-ray or load test. So what will we do to every welded fire escape out there? I'm never going to give an opinion on it because I got a million reasons why. But now here's the second half of the story. He wanted 27. He only got a mil. He claimed he was all done in life, and they caught him this past July playing volleyball and basically defrauding because all the 7 litigants basically had an investigator chase him around, and of all times, you know, that he was basically, you know, doing the whole thing. But I still asked, that's fraud. Why didn't you guys, you know, not give him anything at all? He goes, because he still got conked in the head.
Okay.
The insurance company.
Sure.
$7 million. So, all welded connections need a bolt. Otherwise, if somebody gives you an opinion on an all welded fire escapes, now, I have the pieces of the steel. Guess what happened on that one? It rotted from the inside out. All the welds that we visually said were fine, when we finally got the piece of steel that conked the guy in the head, what did we see? It was rotting from the inside out and ate all the welds from the inside out, and when you saw all the snaps, you could see that the full weld, half of it was already rusted through from the inside out. I could never see it unless I x-rayed it, and I could never verify it because I never load tested, because the city of Chicago doesn't want load tests. So, did it get pulled into litigation anyway? So, you want opinions and you accept opinions. What's that mean? Are you free of any lawsuits? Philadelphia says they haven't been in that building in 50 years. There's a lawsuit going on to the owners. Who else is going to get pulled in? So these fire escapes have their issues. And you're basically asking right now to start a program to certify them now because you haven't looked at them for how long? 50 years you haven't looked at them really. They're there. So if they don't fall down, you really haven't done a full evaluation. So you want to get them into a process saying, we need to get these things back into a certification mode that makes a standard. So here's some buildings that, and again, this was a fix. This was in Princeton University. They had an old mansion that became a hotel restaurant, and look at the answers. So the answers sometimes are fire escapes to keep an old building, otherwise it's going to get torn down. This is a YMCA. The only issue they had was a room way up there, and what was the answer? The only thing that could be was a spiral. Nobody allows spirals, but if you look in the code, when you've exhausted all means of getting something in there, and all you have is this little space, you're coming in with a spiral. And if I don't have room for a spiral, you're going to get a ladder. And that's to save the building. Otherwise, you're demoing the building. So fire escapes are going to be around as a solution to a lot of these old barns, a lot of these old factories, a lot of these things. Fire escapes, but you got to build them strong. They got to be galvanized. So let's talk about, you know, where's it start? Your best place to start any fire escape program, downtown. Because then the word is going to get out. Downtown first, institution second, usually residential third, and it's usually a 3 to 5 year program. So here's the class that we did in Washington, D.C. So we work, again, throughout the country, but building departments, maintenance, health departments, fire prevention. You can't have one guy running the whole show. You have to sort of mix it all up. And I forgot to mention today, you know, the city of Lowell is one of our model cities. They use the tax letter, you know, the letter that goes out saying you got to pay your taxes, to announce that if you have a building in the city, you have, the fire escape code is not going to be enforced regarding fire escapes. Please provide us with a copy of your certification. So any announcements going out by the city, you can make a general announcement saying, hey, fire escape codes are not going to be strictly enforced based on some of the things that have happened here in Philadelphia, here in Colorado. You know, we're basically trying to stem anything from happening in the future. So housing authorities, these are downtown walkarounds. So we're basically looking at places where people live that are part of the Section 8, part of HUD, and they're getting a first-hand view of things that somebody else said was fine on a piece of paper. So as you walk these people down the alleyways, you're going to see some horror stories. We got all the codes, but you guys just got the new code here too. That's 1027.16, 1030.2. You just found another one that you just, Joe over there, our new fire escape leader in the state of Virginia. You guys got the construction code, OSHA. Now this says that you as an employee can't be walking into a building that doesn't have 2 means of egress, if it's required. That was brought to my point that says if that building has a sprinkler, but somebody has a sprinkler system shut off. But otherwise, OSHA's helping you right now. Because it says very clear, during repairs or alterations, employees must not occupy. You're an employee. the people in the building are employees. The vendors, the electricians, the demolition guys, the contractors. So you can walk into a building in your downtown right now, being run by a major corporation or a small corporation, and say, your fire escape on the back, when you get to it? They're like, oh, we're gonna get, at the end of the project, we're gonna get to it. You wanna say, no, we need to get on it now. Or let's get some scaffolding in here, and then I'll allow you to mothball, but then I need you to block all access from your building to that fire escape from the indoors. I need you to block all the access outside so that my firemen, if they come here in the middle of the night, they're not gonna use your fire escape for any reason, because you've got all kinds of signage on it saying what? It's gonna be finished last. Okay? So here's some of the, again, some of the questionnaires. So this is Tacoma's. So is there industry standard confidence tests out there? So you can just copy and paste. This is their pass-fail that I told you about. This is the City of Boston one. All they want you to say is, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the Mass Building Code. That's all they want. So, and this is a state document. As per 1001.3. You step out of the city, and there's other cities that have had this class, and guess what they want? Load tests or other evidence of strength. Why? They're just interpreting it different. So not all times does the major city lead. A lot of times the smaller cities lead. But it's something that you have to understand, that as soon as you make this step, there's gonna be some blowback. And the blowback is basically, you know, you're bringing up a life safety concern that nobody really wanted to talk about for a long while. So again, these documents are available online now. So you can go to Seattle, you can go to Portland, Oregon, you can go to Tacoma, you can go to California Reg 4. And here's the letter that the city of Lowell sent out in the tax records. And all it says is, hi, you know, we're doing better now, and just so you know, if you own a building, here's the code, and we'd like a copy of your certificate within 30 days. So take advantage of mailings. You just put in a standard letter. I'll give you a copy of this. We sent that out in the link that we sent to David. Oregon, I'll tell you, Oregon has basically, they're at the lead. They basically took all the stuff and asked, where's all the loopholes, and they try to close as many. So they're probably, I would say, 95% to where I would have it, you know, because I can still sneak in some of these holes over here. Here's their confidence test, which is just a line of questions. If they have 22, you'll probably come up with 30. You might have 15, doesn't matter. You're no longer getting an opinion, you're getting assurance. And a lot of design professionals will not sign on assurance. I mean, on opinions, you know, because they want that disclaimer. Tags. I want to show you this part here. Okay. The code, all exterior steel or wooden stairs. So whether it's a fire escape or an egress, must be maintained. It makes logical sense. It's getting water and air every day, rotting because it's wood, rusting because it's steel. So, is this an exterior steel or wooden stairs? Are these exterior steel or wooden stairs? And here's an external parking garage fire escape system. Okay? They even make them out of aluminum, by the way. And is that an allowable material to make a fire escape? Yep. It's non-combustible. The only problem with aluminum is that, see this window over here? When the fire blows out at 2,000 to 4,000 degrees, aluminum melts at what? 1,000, steel melts at what? 2 to 3. So what's the biggest problem with aluminum?
It melts.
You only got a short window of time before, you know, you've got soup that you're stepping on. But it is allowed. So this may be that situation with a 22-story. You know, you get these buildings that get converted. They used to be office building, now they're all high-end residential condos. So it's not that they get to keep the fire escape, you must modify the fire escape to meet the current code. Can the hysterical committee stop you? It's life safety, and it's relating to means of egress they can't. Doesn't mean they won't. So we've done this. We've done a building in California where it went fully condo, it become, because that's the only answer to some of these buildings. Because nobody rents second floor up. And unless you put people living in there, your downtowns are dying unless you repurpose these buildings. So guess what? Fire escapes are gonna be around, but a lot of them need to be upgraded. So, a lot of industry down here, if you have any machinery, any oil refineries, what do they have? Farm equipment, what do they have? Billboards, what do they have? How about these waiting balconies in a lot of hotels? Okay? Those are areas of refuge. Are they exterior steel or wooden bridges? So do they need to be maintained and verified and load tested? How about these hotels that have the outside stair all the time, or the outside platforms, and then a stair at the end that's exposed to the weather? Do those need to be examined? So don't look at traditional fire escape, all exterior steel or wooden stairs. How about these things? Wood porches, this is all on the residential side, a taboo word, don't touch residential. But is it being maintained at all times? Is it ready for instant use? If this porch is not ready for instant use and you feel that there's a danger, can you write a violation on it? Under 1027, shall be maintained in good working order. So a fireman walking on the back of a building that has these porches, and he looks around and it's all creaking and making, can he write a violation on 1020.7? 1027.16. So are these exterior steel wooden stairs? Are these exterior steel wooden stairs? You guys remember Chicago? 27 people died on a fire escape, not a fire escape collapse, a deck collapse? 27 people died. Are those built to 100 pounds per square foot? Like I said, it's the tip of the iceberg. Fire escapes is where you're going to start, but you're going to eventually get to all exterior steel wooden stairs, bridges, balconies. How about handicap ramps? All of those need to be examined. You got to make it safe for all the dogs. Equipment, farm equipment. Not the farm, but the oil and gas industry. These are all things you're going to go and get yourself onto. Billboards, equipment on rooftops, fire escape or staircases that feed the elevator shaft, crosswalks, skywalks. These are all privately owned. So here, this is Bentley University. So this is a state road or a city road, but what do they own? To get their students across. So we have to examine that skywalk, that crosswalk. Look at all the ice forming. What's this ice forming from? Bad gutter. Is this being properly maintained? And that's rust jacking and ice jacking. What's it done to the steel? You don't know. That's why you're having it examined. But you walk by on a snowy day or an icy day. Oh, this is common. So why did somebody put in a Home Depot ladder there? That's what this building turned into a 3-family overnight. And all of a sudden they put a ladder there to meet the second means of egress. And they've been doing it for 40 years. They've been paying taxes for 40 years. What do you need to come and do? Well, it's the only thing that will make this thing legal. They need a platform outside. And then they need a ladder system that is legal to the ground, if you allow it. Otherwise, you check on the records and there was never a permit pulled for that. What you get is, yeah, they can keep that 3rd floor because you need the income, the city's taxing it as a 3-family, but now I want the window to turn into a door, I want a platform, and I want a staircase all the way to the ground. And why is that? Because this guy's a slumlord and he gave you a hard time. But the little old lady next door who had the same setup, and she doesn't have a dime. You're like, you know what, I just need you to get a platform out there, it's a pre-existing non-conforming condition. All depends on how you want to interpret the code that day. Okay, so some more. Cantilevers, spirals. These all need to be examined. All external steel wooden stairs. That includes spiral stairs. You guys ready? Elizabeth, New Jersey. This is the only remaining slidescape I found in the country. So, let me give you a tour. So this is us on the roof of the Elizabeth Fire Department. And we're trying to open up these doors. So these two doors are on all the floors. So every floor you go to these two doors and you open up these two doors. And it starts there. See, where we're up here. And it goes corkscrew for 12 stories. And then way down here, because they own this piece of the building, it takes a left-hand curve and it goes in a straight shot for about 30 feet. And hopefully your feet are still facing in the right direction, because you're going to slide down and hit this big iron door with a big paddle with your feet, and you smash this paddle, and this big iron door goes, opens, and you just tumble right out. Oh, by the way, this is how you jump into this. This is exactly what it looks like when as soon as you open these doors, there's no potato sacks to be given. And that's what you got to look at. The only light you're getting is the light from the doors that you just opened. So you can jump in face first, dive in head first, or get pushed in because there's a bunch of people trying to get out of this burning building. So as soon as you get pushed into this, and by the way, they put in because the doors were locked down below, we couldn't open the door below, they called in the trainees, and they sent a trainee down this thing. So from the second floor, we sent a trainee down on a rope, to basically go in and kick the door from the inside with a flashlight. But it was pretty scary and it was a trainee. They brought a guy in, tied him up, and threw him down this thing. But if you go down this thing and you tumble wrong, or you are too big and you land sideways and you corkscrew this thing, you know what happens as you stop piling all these people into this thing? It's a sausage. Filled with, it's a fireman sausage, yes.
Size.
Oh, this thing is, on each side is probably
You're a
3
big
feet.
boy,
This is 6 feet total, so it's about 3 feet on either side. And it's just a slide. It's actually made out of, it's all metal, galvanized metal, and it's all riveted. But the rivets that don't pop up, and you'll actually slide all the way down if you maintain control. Otherwise, you do anything wrong, you start tumbling. And it's a one-way system. It's made to go down. You can't go up. But it's still active today. It still meets the means of egress for this building. This is it was built in 1905. And so in all your codes, some people will find some older codes where slidescapes was an approved means of egress. So as long as they maintain it, got it? So they should put a fire escape system on the, on the outside, to, basically remove, but this is an approved system. And it's the only one. Now, anybody that has military history knows that slidescapes were used in the military in a lot of their barracks. So slidescapes have been around, but mainly at the turn of the century, and then it just became senseless because everybody was using it as a ride. People were breaking into the building, climbing up the opposite way. So these are this is that fold-out ladder that I told you about. They sell them online. And basically it folds into itself. It's a third means of egress. It doesn't satisfy your second means of egress, but you can also use it to replace an existing ladder so that instead of a drop-down or a cantilever, you can have a fold-out ladder. So that's what a fold-out ladder looks like. It folds into itself. So a lot of companies are selling this to single-family homes where they have kids in the attic, and you can self-install a ladder fire escape system. But it doesn't meet any means of egress. It's a third means of egress. So are these bag ladders, which you basically keep in the closet, and then you basically hook onto the windowsill and you throw it out, and the kids get out. Again, it doesn't satisfy any means of egress. It's a third means of egress. It's a supplementary, okay? Here's another approved system that we're about to talk about, okay? So you've talked about what is old, what is new, right? So I'm going to show you two systems. One is a system that you can put in your truck, or people can have in their buildings, and it's about $2,000 to $4,000 for the system. okay? And it lets you get into any building and evacuate people out when they can't go down the stairs anymore. So whenever a building gets, something occurs and everybody has to go to the roof and they're all waiting for the helicopter fleet to arrive, that's what this system. And then there's another system I'm gonna show you, and that's about $2 to $4 million for that system. And that system is when you can have it put on the roof and it's made to basically evacuate. So in some cases, it would be your third means of egress, doesn't satisfy the second means, but in today's fears of buildings that have problems when people are forced to go up, this is one of the ways to get people down. So check this one out.
Well, if you live in a high-rise building, you've probably at least wondered how you would get out of there if there was a fire. Those fears became all too real for thousands of Americans on September 11th. Many were trapped in the World Trade Center towers as the floors below them burned. Well, now inventors are working on new technology
This
to
is
help
developed by
people
a
get
fireman
out alive.
here in America.
Ariadzer has a look at one invention.
And down he goes. Looks simple, and it is. The Recover-All high-rise evacuation system being tested on this day by firefighters.
I think this is impressive. It looks pretty easy to set up. It's easy to use. It's hand-free operation. It's self-contained. I think it'll work.
Our equipment was designed specifically to be used by senior citizens, by children. That's why we chose a device that is fully automatic in operation. That's why we enclose the victim inside a full coverage suit, which eliminates the fear of heights.
The first step for evacuation is putting on the big suit. Kind of makes you look like a baked potato, but this actually protects you from heat and flames if you're in a real fire situation. The firefighters let us go for a test ride. Picture one of these machines on your condo balcony ready to use, or in your high-rise office stored away for an emergency.
It buys you the time to escape.
We're 6 floors up. Once you push back and let go, the machine lowers you gently to the ground at the rate of 3 feet per second. The ride is smooth all the way down. You never speed up, you never slow down. It keeps you at that same rate all the way down to the ground. So the obvious question on everyone's mind is, would this system have made any difference in the World Trade Center disaster?
My personal opinion.
So here's what the purpose of that. Well, actually, let me show you this one, then I'll talk to you about that piece. This is $2 to $4 million. These have been already approved and tested to be used in the U.S., but there's nobody using them as we speak. This is an actual 20-story building in Israel that has this system already working there. All this is online. If you go to YouTube, high-rise escape systems. This system is controlled by the fire department. They use technology from cruise boats. This is only to be used in case you can't come down the regular means. This is a building that there's something wrong and they need to evacuate people from above because they can't come down the traditional means. These collapsible elevator systems basically now are going to feed firefighters back into the building. So this is an actual building in Israel. There isn't one building in the U.S. that has this. So even when you have uneven floors, you know, you can have people get into the system. Basically feeds firemen into 5 floors at a time. 3 floors at a time, 5 floors at a time. So multiple floor evacuation. Again, this is a third means of egress. This is not your second means of egress. This is an emergency egress. And basically now people are being brought down. The firemen stay where they are and they're fighting the fire. And now this is going to keep going all day long to get people from above that can't come down to traditional means. $2 to $4 million for this setup. So as you can see, they start collapsing into each other and as they keep bringing more people down. Got it? So now, what's that mean? If you're doing something in your area and you got somebody putting $100 million into a building and they've got 2 means of egress, the best suppression system in the world, one of the things that's available if they want is a self-evacuation system, which is the third means of egress. It's not a second means of egress. but it's basically there in case something occurs and everybody is forced up the building, not down the building. This is how you get them off. That other system that was just shown before, which is $2,000 to $4,000, basically that comes in a bag, and it's a very simple system. It works that when you get into a building, it compresses, the hole that you have compresses between this floor and the floor above. You smash out that window and then the pole sticks out, or if the building already comes equipped with it, it's already mounted on some window nearby. It's a two-way system. You get in the bag and you jump out. As you go down, the other cable comes back up. And then so you're basically using the bag over and over again. And that's how you evacuate. But it's good for these high-rise buildings where, you know, I own it, it's mine, it's sitting in a box like that on the side. There's a situation and I can't get out. I make it smash my window and I put the suit on, put my dog inside the thing with me, and I just jump out, drops me 2 to 3 feet per second, go up to 50 floors plus. In Boston, we were called by the John Hancock to basically look at the possibility of using these systems there in case there was an evacuation. And our biggest concern is how do you cut through all the glass? So we had actually, you know, we got panes of glass that we went into a test field somewhere, and actually we had to create a system of how you break through the glass to let these things swing out and drop people. So it is a concern for a lot of people. So if you have anybody spending $50 million, $100 million, an extra $2 million to $4 million, they can have a third means of egress that sits self-contained on the rooftop. And when you arrive as the fire department, you arrive to use it only if all of a sudden the traditional means of egress is not working. And they're trapped and they start heading up. This is how you get everybody off. Okay? So now, look at the time, guys. We're going to get close to the wrapping session of, I was going to play some videos of, and maybe I can do that, I can play one of the videos of the 900 West Franklin, or we can talk about just what's the next step associated with the program. Because a lot of this sounds great right here, you'll leave, you'll start shoveling some snow, and it'll all go away. You know what I'm saying? And so what we really want to repeat to you is how do you not change your routine on a day-to-day basis, okay? So that all of a sudden it does it automatically. So with permits, we have people from the building department here, right? So with permits and with the OSHA, I'm sorry, building department and fire, but with permits, do you want, can we ask for the certification before or after the permit process? So if we're going to ask it for before, you have to be ready to understand there's going to be some noise associated with that. But you've asked for all kinds of documentation before permits are issued anyway. But that doesn't change anybody's job. You're just asking on a checklist for one more item, and that is you're about to alter or renovate as per OSHA 1910.37, and it says right on there, it says what do you need by OSHA rules, right? So if you need it, I just need it to make sure, and even if you don't have it, somebody's going to walk in, and 9 out of 10 people are not going to have it, will say, what are you asking for? Give me one. So you continue with the permit process, you issue the permit, but you say, hey, get on this quick, because if you don't move on this quick enough, what happens after 30 days? What do you do to the job site? Shut it down. What can we do now? Let's go to the fire department. You guys doing smoke detector sign-offs all the time. One more question. Do you guys have that law here, every time somebody changes the rental, there's a rental sign-off? Is that happening here? Some states are using that also, that every time you re-rent your apartment, you have to have a sign-off of some sort. So, on smoke detectors, when you guys sign off so that they get occupancy, what can you ask, which again becomes another checklist item, what can you ask to be attached to the smoke detector sign-off? A copy of the certification. You're not ordering one, so they don't have one, you're still going to sign off the occupancy, but now what happens if they don't resolve that in 30 days? Right? If all of a sudden, after you sign off and they've occupied the building 30 days later, they still haven't given you a certificate or an examination, shut it down. Extinguishers, sprinklers, and these yearly inspections that you guys do. What do you ask for when you do these yearlies? For the sprinkler, let's tie it right into the sprinkler systems. So they're going to give you an inspection report by a fire protection company. What do you ask? It's always an attachment. And if they don't have one, how much time do they have to cure? So is the sprinkler system on the hook for anything? Not really, right? Because they're issuing what they've been asked to ask the owner for a copy of what? I asked the owner, he didn't have one, so I'm submitting you a blank piece of paper which says what? You guys are now starting the process. Now you issue a written violation because you've seen something or you haven't seen anything? Haven't seen it, you just write a violation. Please submit as part of the requirement. So there's all these checklist items. How about the tax letter? Can you send out a tax letter saying that you're gonna come down on everything that's a fire escape or a means of egress outside? All right? Anybody have any other suggestions, either through health or maintenance code or any additional fire code or examinations that you guys do that you can attach? Anybody have any suggestions they'd like to share with the crowd? Yes?
Good question. Throughout your travels, who is it that usually initiates any policy or code changes, just based on what you've experienced?
What group moves first on this?
Well, who moves first on it, who initiates it, who kind of gets things going in different municipalities?
Fire prevention. They're the guys that, you know, basically, they not only try to prevent fires, they try to prevent death. And so a lot of them are concerned because a lot of times they're forced to walk these fire escapes and render opinions as to, you know, whether the thing looks safe or not. And so a lot of times they don't know where the code is that helps them, which we found in here. And today, from today's class, I was bringing you the codes that I knew. And then from today's class, from a book here and from somebody printing this out, we just basically closed. Now we have 6. We have every code that I'm aware of that's nationwide, but then you guys just brought in your particulars. 1040.2, another one, what was?
The 1030.2 is what I think the fire department would write as a violation, referring to 1021. And then also was looking at the administrative section of 106, which will allow us to accept third-party inspections. And we have to approve those inspections, which would give us the aspect of.
You guys don't have to ask me. Joe knows everything now, see? Any questions? All questions, please refer.
I will just read the book.
No. Everybody wants the quick answer, and you got the quick answer, so that's good. So fire prevention, building department, everybody just needs to work together to say, help me. So every code has been covered, including in Virginia, the ones that were adopted and modified to a certain degree, and we found reliability code, the maintenance code, you know, we've got everything covered here. So that's what you guys need to use, and you need some case studies. You guys need to look at it, and I was just talking with the building department a little bit, saying, listen, this is what you do. You gotta pick 10 cases. And you gotta not only look at today's situation, you gotta look at tomorrow, what you wanna do for the newest ones coming aboard, and have a standard that everything goes through Joe, and everything's gonna go through Bob. I need a building department guy. Give me a name that everybody's gonna go through a building, that guy right there. What's your name? Are you building? Are you building though?
Yes, I'm a builder.
What's your first name again?
Walt.
Walt. Between Walt and Joe, because these guys came up and talked to me and they showed some great interest. Between Walt and Joe, we have the 2 leaders in the fire prevention and in the building department that every and all questions should be directed. You'll leave your email a little bit, I'll pass it on to everybody. But basically what that means is now look back 10 fire escapes, look forward 10 fire escapes. So I don't care what's been done already. Let's go back and look at 10 fire escape systems. Let's look at the one with a collapse of the parking garage. Let's look at the one that was, like somebody else mentioned something at the housing authority. Let's go back and look 10, and let's look forward for 10, and basically use the next 20 cases as case studies, and share it all amongst yourselves. And what that's going to do is basically you're going to see everything that was done wrong, everything that was done right, what we need to fix going forward, and what we need to go back and pull out of your, because let's say you go to that parking garage and you see rust jacking and ice jacking in that garage that was almost killed somebody and now has been certified to your knowledge, and you have that piece of paper to prove it in your office, sitting in a file. What are you going to pull out of your back pocket? Why? That's right, because you can. You have to wait 5 years? Whenever you determine that the structure is suspect, what can you do? You can order a load test, because now that you have this newfound information, you just want to go back and say, hey, I can't hang my hat on this piece of paper that's sitting in my office in a folder, because that's what was happening. You were relying on the authority having jurisdiction being the design professional, when in actuality, all the codes give the authority having jurisdiction power to who? So these, and who's going to inspect all these? Believe me, it's not going to be our company that's going to be inspecting all these. There's plenty of design professionals out there within a mile of here that are gonna be looking at all these. Do they want it? Some of them do, some of them don't. You know who's gonna be fixing it? Within a mile of here, there's welding companies and ironwork companies that are gonna be changing bolts and painting fire escapes. Within a mile of here, there's plenty of painting companies that have their renovator's license and they know how to deal with lead, scraping and painting things. So where are all these people? They're within a mile of here. Okay, so there's no such thing as, oh, there's one guy and he's gonna have the whole, no, we're efficient at what we do, but it doesn't mean that everybody else, there's a million fire escapes. Guys, it's $1 billion industry. Ready? Here's how you get to $1 billion, ready? Is there 10 million buildings in the United States? 10% of them are all 50 to 75 years old or greater. That's only 1 million buildings. If every design professional out there only charged $100 for an inspection and they inspected it in 1 year, what's 100 times a million? If every fire escape only needed a paint job and all you could charge, no matter what size it was $1,000, what's 1 million times 1,000? So it's $1 billion industry that's been asleep for how long? 50 years, and the only reason you guys are waking up to it today is because somebody died in Philadelphia, somebody died in Colorado, somebody died in Chicago, and there's many other deaths on fire escapes that go unreported. And if you know of anybody that ever got hurt on a fire escape from the fire department or the building department, and right now he's either hurt or whatever, and he's collecting just, work-related injury, what's he missing? The liability on the back by the owner who was negligent. So what could that guy be collecting instead of just, workers' comp for, injury related to work? Was it really related only to work? Or did somebody leave a hand grenade laying around that somebody kicked? So if anybody knows anybody that's ever been injured, there's the back end of this, and that is if you can prove negligence, and you walk up to any fire escape and you got a 1/4 inch of rust anywhere in that fire escape, what's that proof? Negligence by who?
By the owner.
By the owner who hasn't looked at it professionally by a third party for how long?
50 years.
At least 25 years. Any additional questions? Because look, we got 20 seconds left before I'm supposed to release the hounds. Again, if you guys want a copy of this video so you can teach your entire office, not just tomorrow, but 5 years from now, I need your cards. Otherwise, the only way you're going to get any information is back through David, who has to forward it to you, and I did. So if anybody got links from David yesterday, in it is confidence tests, examples, and it is departmental procedures and guidelines, and links to all these deaths throughout. But if you want to leave your cards with me, you'll get the direct link. Then I'll try to reach out to you to see whether you want to implement a program by yourself or if you want some help. You just need a cup of coffee and a donut. That's how we usually work. And thank you very much for the class, guys.